A
We're
new
gonna move on
study
to the next
finds that
video. All right, so it says new research links ancient indigenous DNA to living Puerto Ricans. And this video was 5 years ago. CBS News.
people of pre-colonial Puerto Rico did not disappear entirely. A new study.
So 5 years ago. When was it the one? What year was the one with Yanni Legosimo? Does it tell me right here? Let me go back just to see how long.
Some archaeologists argue that.
Okay, so he posted this a year ago. We don't know if it was the year before that they was doing the video, probably months before they posted this, but this was a year ago. The research video.
A new study finds that people
was 5 years ago. So with this research, they found out that, new research links ancient indigenous DNA to living Puerto Ricans. So that right there alone proves that, the Taínos still exist. So why not, let them claim who they are? Why take that away from them? From us? Because as far as I'm concerned, my roots go right into that.
People of pre-colonial Puerto Rico did not disappear entirely as previously believed. Historians believed the indigenous tribe called the Taínos were completely eradicated after Europeans arrived to the island during the 15th century. But now that's not the case. Researchers have found 3 genomes from ancient skeletons living in the DNA strands of living Puerto Ricans. With me now to explain this important discovery is one of the geneticists on the project.
They went and turned Undertaker on all these tombstones. They went and dug bodies out, took their DNA from their spinal cord, and went and checked just to make sure. But even with that, why not let them claim to be indigenous? I don't understand that. Y'all took something that wasn't rightfully y'all's anyways. So if our DNA is mixed, it's because y'all sat here and y'all did what y'all did. Y'all can't blame us for what y'all did to our ancestors, and now we're mixed. We're the descendants, obviously. Durr.
Maria Nieves Colon. Good to see you, Maria.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So I'm fascinated by this story. I'd always been told, I have family from Haiti. I'd always been told that the Taínos were completely eradicated after Europeans arrived to the Caribbean islands. So explain to our audience why these results are so important to you, and of course to not just the people of Puerto Rico, but all the people in the Caribbean who would have had Taínos living on some of those islands.
Yeah, this is a very common story, actually, that we hear throughout the Caribbean. And it stems from interpretations of the writings that European colonizers left behind. They talk about people on these islands being wiped out or dying out pretty quickly after colonization. But that idea kind of bumps up against oral histories and stories that people tell on the islands of having, for instance, an indigenous great-grandmother or carrying cultural traditions that have a native origin into the present. So what our study,
Go ahead.
What our study looked at was the genomes of the ancient population to try to understand whether or not there was some genetic continuity that went hand in hand with the cultural continuity that we also see.
And you've spent 10 years doing that, working on this research, which is remarkable. So what are some of the biggest discoveries you were able to make over the course of your research?
Yeah, so we found 2 main things with our
study.
We looked at the genetics of about 124 ancient people that lived in Puerto Rico, at least 1,000 to 600 years before European contact. And we found first that there was a genetic connection between these ancient people and present-day indigenous communities in the Amazon, which suggests that it was Amazonian people who initially kind of peopled the islands of the Caribbean. And we also found there was a partial genetic continuity between that.
Wait a minute. Hold. Let's go back. Wait a minute. She said there were Amazonian people that went into the island too. So it wasn't just Christopher Columbus and Ponce de Leon. Hold up. Wait a minute.
Communities in the Amazon, which suggests that so we found 2 main things with our study. We looked at the genetics of about 124 ancient people that lived in Puerto Rico, At least 1,000 to 600 years before European contact. And we found first that there was a genetic connection between these ancient people and present-day indigenous communities in the Amazon, which suggests that it was Amazonian people who initially kind of peopled the islands of the Caribbean. And we've also found there was a partial genetic continuity between them and present-day Puerto Ricans.
Oh, wait a minute. All right. So in the island, in Puerto Rico, in the island, you're telling me that there is evidence, there's proof that there wasn't just Taínos, that there were also Amazonians. That's what she's trying to say. Many colonial documents say that Puerto Rico native peoples died in the 1500s. This led to common narratives of indigenous extinction. Despite the presence of islanders who have oral history of indigenous descent or indigenous cultural identities. So the proof on the walls, the writings on the walls, the scriptures and all that, that's not proof enough, I guess. What else do they want? I mean, they found proof in the DNA. And even with that, they won't let them, they won't let the people in Puerto Rico claim themselves as indigenous. What in the world is going on?
And I say partial because we did also find a lot of genetic diversity that was present in the past that isn't present today. So clearly there was a decline. But the fact that we found 3 sequences that persisted into the present day suggests that this wasn't a complete genetic extinction.
That's fascinating. And I had always long wondered where the Taíno actually came from. So the idea or the hypothesis that they originated in what is present-day Brazil is also really, really interesting. Did the climate in Puerto Rico and in the Caribbean make it difficult to analyze the DNA?
Yeah, well, that's part of the reason why it took so long. So the same conditions that make the Caribbean a beautiful place for vacation, the warmth and the humidity, make it possibly the worst place for DNA preservation. So ancient DNA in general is always degraded and fragmented because we're working with genetic material that has been in bones or teeth for thousands, sometimes hundreds of years. And when it's really hot, that degradation just becomes faster. So in order to deal with those issues, we had to work in extremely clean conditions. So we would take the skeletal remains and we would analyze them in a clean lab. And then we would wear these spacesuits that sort of protect the samples from our own skin and hair so we don't contaminate the samples.
They're not spacesuits. They're actually considered biohazard suits. But I understand. I get it.
And we also have to use cutting edge technology for sequencing these genomes. So
they're not biohazard suits. They're like biohazard suits. My bad. I don't know why I call them biohazard suits, but what she was, never mind. Y'all get the point. They're not spacesuits.
We have to use these very large and expensive machines. And that kind of technology just wasn't available 10 years ago. So that's part of the reason why it took us such a long time to do.
So the other thing that I'm sort of intrigued by is modern day humans have been on this planet a relatively short period of time when you compare the age of the planet and you compare the age of some species of animals who have been here for many millions of years. I wonder why there was never a study done of people now living in the Caribbean, in addition to Puerto Rico and some other countries, to discover whether or not the Taíno may have mixed with the population of either colonial Europeans or even Africans who were brought to some of these islands, and that DNA would be
That's a good question.
You would be able to see that DNA in modern day genetic testing. But has that never been the case?
Yeah, there's been previous research, but most of it has been done with present day populations. So like Puerto Ricans that are living now, like myself or my family, would get sampled and we would look at their genetic diversity. And as you said, we would find that there is a mix between Native American genomes of Native American ancestry and African and European ancestry. But the question that we weren't able to answer through those approaches was how much of that Native American component stems from the island's ancient inhabitants versus coming from Native peoples that came later on, perhaps relocated through the process of colonization or something like that. So we did have previous research in that. It's just that it was different in focus.
Really fascinating. So how does
So I mean, we all know that, you know, the Taínos migrated to the island. I mean, that's not something new. I want to know something new.
How does your discovery now alter the way we think about the history of Puerto Rico?
Well, for me personally, I think it gives voice to communities that were marginalized and misrepresented in the historical record. So by integrating the ancient DNA with archaeology and also examining the historical record, we can sort of paint a more complete picture. It's as if we had a puzzle and we were missing some pieces, and this work allows us to have a much clearer image of that puzzle because we can add one more piece to it. And it also tells us that some of these oral histories, some of these cultural traditions that people have must also be considered as sources of evidence when we ask research questions about the past.
And so I guess
From what I'm understanding is that Puerto Rico and Jamaica are going through the same thing. Even though Puerto Rico, right, is part of the United States, right? We're not immigrants, right? Or nothing like that. The crazy part about it is, right, Jamaica and Puerto Rico are fighting for the same thing, for rights over their country. The indigenous people, right, they are from the island, right, are fighting for their rights of their country. Like, it's crazy. They're both going through the same thing right now in present time. It's crazy. Blessings, Van D Gaming. Blessings, how you doing, guys? Make sure y'all go check out Van D Gaming. Yo, he has a great channel. Man, check him out, guys. He does a lot of unpacking, though. Just make sure y'all go check him out. But let's get back on topic. My bad. Like I said, I like learning about my roots, man. And it's crazy how a lot of people don't know about the Taínos. I have a video on here that there's this guy that explained, you know, that he's from Jamaica, also talking about the Taínos and, you know, how they came into Jamaica and much more. Like, we've got to learn our roots, right? We got to understand our past to understand our present to even understand what's going to happen in the future. And I'm not jumping to the future. I'm just trying to understand really what's happening around me right now. Whew.
After spending 10 years doing this fascinating study, what is next for you?
Well, I'm currently collaborating with other people to expand this research to look at other islands in the Caribbean. We would like to obtain higher resolution data and data from many other ancient communities so that we can see if these patterns replicate in Haiti or in Cuba or in other places in the region. And we're also looking at expanding sampling across the Americas so we can have a much better reference point when we're analyzing the ancient genomes of the Caribbean to other populations.
That's really, really fascinating stuff. And where can people find your just completed research?
Yeah, so we posted a preprint of our manuscript on bioRxiv, which is a server on the internet. And we can also, or people can also access our study through Twitter. It's all posted on my Twitter account. So.
What's your Twitter handle?
At MitoPR.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, Maria Nieves Colon. We really appreciate it. And come back and tell us as you update the study what more you've learned.
I'm definitely going to check her out on her Twitter because I got a Twitter. So I don't know why you call it a Twitter. I keep forgetting they do call it a handle on Twitter. Ain't that weird? Why did they call it a Twitter handle? Right? Like, is Twitter trying to handle? Like, is Twitter a handler? My bad. I shouldn't have said that. Ooh, I don't know why I said that so loud. I mean, shit. I need to get out my head. Let's continue. Back on topic. But we got another video, right? We're gonna be reacting to, like I said, right? If they found ancient indigenous DNA found in living people in living Puerto Ricans, right? Why should they not be able to claim to be indigenous if they're descendants of the Taínos from the island? Crazy part is that it seems to be proved that around the time that the Taínos were in the island before Christopher Columbus and Ponce de Leon did what they did, right? There seems to be proof that there were Amazonian people living in the island too of Puerto Rico. That explains why my grandfather was so tall. Shit, my grandfather was like 6'5", 6'6", something like that. My son is 6'1", something like that right now. Whoa, that would explain a lot of things. That the Taínos and the Amazonian people kind of, do the chingy chingy bang bang thingy, and Puerto Ricans are mixed with a lot of, but see, that's why they say that not every Puerto Rican is black. In order for you to be black, you have to have that indigenous blood in you. And it's crazy that it took me a minute to understand that, right? I didn't know what they meant in the beginning, but like I said, I've been doing my research for a while, talking from family members to, people that claim to be Taíno and much more. Watching videos, reading books, like I've been paying attention and listening. And it was crazy, like I said. One thing I have learned is that in Puerto Rico, there's different tribes. Just the same way that there's different tribes here in America. This is crazy, right? The indigenous roots don't just travel in the Caribbean islands. They travel here in America too. Nobody can explain that. But let's move on to the next video, yo. Let us shorty know what y'all think. I'm about to make this an open panel. If y'all want to come up and talk about history, y'all more than welcome, right? I'm going to leave the link down below. And like I said, I'm only going to be here as long as my earthly goods last a shorty. So listen, man, if y'all enjoying the stream, y'all know what to do. I'm not going to keep repeating it. So listen, man, that's not what we're doing. Let's enjoy ourselves. Let's talk about it, right? I'm going to also leave this in the community wall. So just in case you can't hit it right here, because if you have a phone, you might not be able to hit the link in the chat. But this will be an open panel if y'all want to talk about your roots and stuff like that, about the history of your roots and much more. Mine's is the Taínos. So today we're going to be diving into a shorty's roots. Let's learn about the Taíno warriors. Let's learn about the Arawaks. So our next video